Hi, I'm Nate the Bias User, and today I'm going to be reviewing this new Swans album, The Beggar. Swans is a band that is 40 years old at this point, but still, with everything they dropped last decade, very much quality post-rock material, so I was definitely hyped for the release of this newest record, despite the delays that it was getting, and now that it's out, I would say these delays were worth it. There's a lot of material here, but no fillers, same as always, 2 hours and 2 minutes of it to be exact, making this their longest since their 1996 masterpiece, Soundtracks for the Blind, which is not only my favorite Swans album, but one of my favorites of all time. But I guess this one doesn't feel as much of a double album when looking at the track list. The second side only has 2 tracks, but the first to the second is literally over 40 minutes. But with comparisons to other recent Swans records, I would like to mention this thing is a lot more softer, leaning very deep into folk territory, while still having post-rock-esque build-ups and lengths. So based on my experience, I hope people don't get into this thing expecting it to be as dense as a project like To Be Kind or The Glowing Man, because doing that resulted in a bummed out first listen, at least for the first side. I got into the intro, The Parasite, and its acoustic play at the beginning and ranged vocals from Michael Gira, and breezy build-up with space and noises, not appreciating these aspects as much as I did when coming back, just because I was thinking to myself, asking questions like, where are the drums, where's the density? But after this we get Paradise Is Mine, that I would say is the furthest this track goes to scratching the itch of a To Be Kind fan. It has a mean, catchy bass and guitar play that goes through the whole thing. We have the background effects, and I was liking the high-pitched group humming, along with the single-played guitar strings in a spaced-out manner. It gives out a sassy vibe I can't complain about. Also, in the middle we get this industrial noise, giving out a static-like harmonica sound. It sounds insane, but it's a part of the build-up that gets more powerful when Michael starts repeating the word mind, in the ritual-like tone you would expect out of him. I wouldn't consider Los Angeles City of Death to be very post-rock centered, but I was appreciating the jangle pop spin that still feels like Swans, even with the tight, bright drum play. We do get this hitting drum passage with guitar striking with it, making a good thrill of a jangle pop direction. Speaking of which, the follow-up Michael has done, while on a surface level relatively calm at the beginning and end, the spam of plucking strings on these moments are brutal. While not very out there, super fast, and with the flavor, we get some foggy and bright keys and bells that were beautiful, and beauty gets emphasized harder, with leading to the hitting and heavenly instrumentation centered around the middle, but taking up most of the track. This sounds like most of what we got from their 1991 album, White Light from the Mouth of Infinity, which I do appreciate them coming back to, because technology has advanced in the past 30 years, not to mention Swans or the mastermind behind them, Michael Gira, has evolved as a musician in general, so it's good to hear them take those abilities on their past styles. Unforming is also very beautiful, but this time it doesn't hit. It's more of a folk cut that's very spacey in the atmosphere and Jira's singing, that at certain points gets backed up by his own humming. The title track is a solid 10 minutes. The drums are soft, but I still like how it hits, and how bassy the storm of a guitar of most of this thing comes off. Didn't have many complaints for the 11 minutes of ebbing either. The group singing over acoustics towards the start were sweet, and it gets so blissful when a piano and whistling synth joins. And when the acoustics stop being the focus, the song gets more grand in volume with louder guitars, out there humming from both a choir and Michael, where sometimes they're separate and sometimes they're together. And even though they don't come off as heavy, the drums are smacking. And this all leads to the closer of the first half, Why Can't I Have What I Want Anytime That I Want, where most of my enjoyment comes from waving guitar noises towards the end. But I still like the swaying back and forth build until then. Very good closer from front to back. Then we enter the second side to The Beggar, starting with the 40-minute cut, The Beggar Lover, introducing itself with different layers of horns playing in various volumes. We also get the sound of church organs and violins joining in, sounding like what you would hear when the THX production company logo is shown at the beginning of a movie. And while this isn't the longest passage of sound I've heard from Swans, it's still very long, at least 3 minutes. But when it ends, we get a soothing voice memo, getting backed up by plucking strings, and when that ends, we get a sequence of sounds of what I believe to be wooden chairs when struggling to hold the weight of a person. That later gets replaced by a huge windy passage of drums falling down real fast. It's kind of like the beginning of Hot for Teacher by Van Halen. Then after we get a loud tunnel sensation, leading to the sound of Michael and a choir humming. I can't say that word enough. And when it ends, we get a buzzing bass sound that builds up as usual and does not continue. We get a quiet moment of metal sounding strings that fade out when thick drums appear. And I love the way it taps, but when the track grows to be more out there, the drum production feels more feather-like, which is not an issue. It creates balance, and towards the end of this phase, and middle of basically the entire track, we get what was not at all expected, but the soulful blues group humming sequence from It's Coming, It's Real, a track off their 2019 record, Leaving Meaning, which was definitely a highlight from that record, despite it not being one of my favorites in their discography, makes a return on this song. I was blown away hearing it fade in and fit in well with the drum smacking, drones, and slow punk rock strings. And it was even cooler to not just hear this return of the group humming with it later just being that and nothing else, but the progression of more humming coming in brighter than the original. But just like most of this track, the sounds we get don't last forever. But I still left this sequence with appreciation on the fact Jira and company expanded on this sound instead of keeping it behind them. And what we get after is also great. I love the sound of a bunch of shoes tapping on a wooden floor. And with the final moments, it's soft but also very jazzy. And while it's definitely not my favorite to the track, it's engaging, and considering the bells that come in, I can't say it's a liability to the rest of the song. And neither is the closer, the Memorious. The snare is very clean and flabby in a good way, and that with the wandering guitar play, even with the 8-minute length, did not bore me. So yeah, while I will admit The Beggar is a Swans album that took some getting used to, it's the fucking Swans for God's sakes. And when I did get used to this thing, while I still didn't find it to be as explosive as any of their best records last decade, the instrumentation, production, and vocals are still very spiritual and mind-bending. Get into this record not expecting it to hit the same way any other Swans record has. In fact, get into this thing not treating it like a Swans record, but a record from an experienced, unique folk band you never heard of until now. So you can leave this record being like, oh, Swans made this? But yeah, Swans has done it again. Can't wait to hear the continuance in this phase of the band's career. I'm gonna give this album an 8.1. Like, subscribe, comment how you feel, or give a suggestion. Check out my other social medias, ring that bell, and I'll see you next time.